Hello everyone, welcome to episode 84 of this awesome, amazing Osu Let's Play series. In the last episode, I talked about chunking and what that means and how it can apply to both low and high AR. And in this episode, I want to touch on this topic of quote-unquote playing more or play more, this notion that I think is spread amongst, trying to ask your favorite player a question about improvement, things like that, and you sort of just get shot down with this very simple answer of play more. It's become a sort of meme or been joked about around the community for really the last few years, and I just want to use this episode to give my thoughts about it. But before I get into any of that, as usual, I'd like to shout out that I live stream every single day over at twitch.tv, so that will be linked in the description. But if you want to hang out with me live or watch me play this game live or ask me questions or anything like that, please stop by, say hello. And also, bonus points if you tell me that you came from this Let's Play series. We'll be very happy to see you there. So, with that said, I think the premise behind telling someone to play more is that I think, as with any other skill-based activity, there's... how do I put this? You can only learn, or you can only get so good with just knowledge about something, and ultimately improving your skills at skill-based activity does take a lot of time and dedication and reflecting on your own personal situation, and it's very hard to capture what exactly you're supposed to do with just simple answers. But there's also no get rich quick scheme when it comes to improving at Osu, or I say any skill-based activity because this same idea applies to art or just any sort of fine craft or just skill-based activity as a whole. It's almost like, oh, there must be some quick way to just get really strong and like really just super fast at running. Or hopefully you sort of get the idea. I mean, it's the reason why... Okay, how do I put this? It's very natural for people to want very, simple answers to things, right? It's the reason why get-rich schemes work in the first place. Why it's like, oh, just sign up for my awesome course and pay me money and I'll tell you how to get money quickly. Things like that, that it's like... It's no wonder why people try to find simple ways to get out of putting in the hard work that's necessary to improve at something. But yeah, so with that said, the reason why people are simply just told to play more when asking questions, because I will admit that there is a lot of value that comes out of being told something that you are sort of struggling on, or like when you're not really sure how to approach a problem that you're having, or how to best approach improving at a certain area of play, for example. There's a lot of value in just sort of asking someone and seeing what advice they give, because let's say you have been improving a skill completely on your own for like 10 years, and there may have been some very simple things that took you like 9 years to figure out. And then if you had just been told about that stuff very early on, it makes a really big difference. And actually, on that topic, I remember, I think it was Ryuke, we said something like, not necessarily genetics, but that like luck actually plays a very big role in improvement. Not in the sense of like you're just sort of lucky to have skill within you, but let's say you're trying to get a comfortable pen grip, for example, or like you just switch to tablet, right? And so there's two types of players, or I guess two hypothetical players, right? So the first player switched to tablet and they spent like 4 months, or honestly sometimes even years, like experimenting with their grip and trying so many different things to get stable aim. And I don't know, hypothetically, like mouse just doesn't work for them, right? So just like struggling with their tablet aim for so long. And another player could have spent that same amount of time on practice, but it could have been spent a lot more efficiently, because let's say hypothetical player number 2 does not have that issue of, I don't know, they like, when they started using tablet, they just had a pen grip or whatever settings that were like naturally very stable and they never had to think about it. So that second player could spend all that time practicing, you know, I guess what actually matters, or like a more diverse range of things, and actually improve a lot more. And in that sense, it's basically the idea of like having gotten lucky with like your original playstyle as being a way that actually, I guess, fosters or facilitates improvement. But yes, so with that said, my point of saying that is that I think being told, right, so like being given answers to like questions that you might have is definitely helpful, and there is merit in, you know, asking questions to make sure you're doing things right. But to a certain extent, like at the end of the day, nothing really beats just like putting in the effort and practice, and you know, it takes a lot of effort to get really good at something. You know, you have to, I think, have an above average, or I don't know, the way I think about it is like you need to have an above average mindset to be an above average player, or you need to be above average to become above average, basically. So yeah, sometimes just means putting in extra practice when other people would not really be willing to, you know. Well, I guess sort of sounds cliche, but hopefully that is somewhat clear. And this song, so I don't know if you guys know, like when I go through my song list to pick maps for these episodes, sometimes I skip them, and then like I'm not sure if I have played some of these maps or not. So sometimes I click on one and I'm surprised there's no score. I'm like, oh, you can play this song. But yes, let's see. So okay, so on the topic of, oh, okay, yes, so I think okay, so what I mentioned earlier about sort of, you need to be able to analyze your own specific situation, because okay, one thing I've noticed, and by the way, this is a pro tip for asking people questions in general, is people often ask very broad questions that don't really, for one, they don't really have a clear answer. And when you ask someone a question like, how do I get, okay, it's just basic example, like, how do I get better at Osu? Okay, you DM your favorite top player, how do I get better at Osu? And for one, that question is too broad to give you a clear answer that's actually going to be helpful, right? I think broad questions get broad answers, right? So oftentimes, if you asked a question and you were simply told to play more, then probably your question kind of sucks. Or, okay, maybe not sucks, but your question's kind of too broad. But obviously, ultimately, that advice is sort of, most advice for improving at skill-based activities does boil down to just practicing more. Oh, and on that note, by the way, I have found that instead of telling people to play more when they ask me a question, sometimes I just tell them to practice a lot. If you just change the wording from play more to practice a lot, that actually gives people like more satisfaction with your answer for some reason. So yeah, yeah, sorry if I've ever done that to you and you're just finding out that it was just an elaborate ruse this whole time. No, but I mean, ultimately for a lot of things, right, like I've mentioned, that is really what it comes down to. Did I just pick the top difficulty of this map? Oh, okay, you know, okay, no backing out now. I'm not sure if I can play this while talking. Okay, but let's see. Oh, okay. So, okay, yeah, I'm playing the lower diff. I cannot think while playing that map. So, okay, oh no, my train of thought, it's just completely gone. Oh, okay, yes. So, being able to analyze your own gameplay is, I think, actually very powerful for not only figuring out what you're doing wrong, but also if you do need to ask a question, and your question can be very specialized in, you know, you're more likely to get a response that's actually helpful. And also, when you're asking someone a question, you want to make it very clear what your goal is, like, to get out of that conversation. And also, like, how much effort you're willing to, or I guess how much of a commitment you're expecting the other person to give you. Because, for example, like when someone asks me a question, then obviously, I guess it's not really a conscious thing, but I'm sort of thinking about like how much of a commitment it would be to answer this question. And usually I do try to answer every question as often as possible, especially on my live streams, as I mentioned at the start of all these episodes. I do pretty much answer every question there. So do stop by if you have questions, and you're more than welcome to ask me. But yes, hopefully my point is clear. I think that is just a tip that can go beyond the scope of Usu. And if you're asking people for a favor especially, make it very clear what their commitment is going to look like. Because, okay, for example, if you ask someone who's very experienced at something, and you're like, hey, can you help me get better at X thing? Like, it's, a lot of things are unclear, right? But if you just have like a very clear list of questions also, then, you know, you can just send them. Or, okay, another thing. So, I know this has, let me think of how to put this. I've seen like this topic's mentioned, especially in like artist communities, but basically, okay, so a lot of people, when they're asking someone or like messaging someone for the first time, just to ask a question, they will message with hello first, and then wait for the other person to respond. Like, let's say someone was asking me, someone wanted to ask me a question, so they go to my DMs, right? And they just say hello. And then I say hello back, and then, you know, I guess it's in the vein of, you know, just trying to be respectful, right? And I understand that, but then like, okay, hello, and then like, okay, hello again, and then they say, how are you? And at this point, like, you don't know the commitment level of like continuing with this conversation. And so at that point, that's usually why you might see a lot of people stop responding at that point, especially if they, I don't know, might have like a lot of other things to tend to. So, or if they just don't feel like it's worth their time to engage in a conversation that they're not really sure how it's going to go. And usually I understand that like some people want to just sort of say hello and get some formalities out of the way before asking their question. But keep in mind that like, if you want to ask someone a question, then you should probably just ask. Or if you want to say, you know, hello, how are you, or blah blah blah, you can do what emails do. Okay, emails don't just say the greeting line and then wait for the person to respond, right? You have like the top heading that's like, you know, hello, hope you're doing well, blah blah blah, and then a little introduction, right? And then you get your whole message out in like one email. Obviously you don't need to go to someone's DMs as if it's an email, because that you know, you have to match up the etiquette obviously. But when you are asking someone, if you have an intention for messaging someone, then you should probably get that out there so that it's not very ambiguous what the other person's role is in your little conversation. Because I guess another sort of takeaway thought related to this is that like, it's perfectly okay to like be messaging someone for a reason other than like wanting to be their friend, I guess. And like, I think everyone understands that. So with that in mind, if you, so a lot of people also say like, oh, hello, I'm sorry to bother you, I'm sure you're very busy. And I found a small amount of messages like that, but I'm mostly speaking sort of in a very general sense, because I know I've heard a lot of other people like sort of talk about this a lot more than I've really experienced it. But I still want to sort of throw it out there in case anyone can, I don't know, take something from it. But okay, I remember I was watching I'm a Fancy Lad's live stream a couple of days ago, and he mentioned that like whenever people would ask him a question, they would like greet with like, oh hello, like sorry to bother you, or something like that. And then Fancy Lad is just like, yeah, I don't know why they're like treating me with such like high social status, like I'm literally just a little random teenager. And I think a lot of people feel maybe not necessarily the same exact way, but Yeah, really, bottom line is, if you want to ask someone for advice on something, then make your question specific. And I think you don't have to be blunt. Okay, there's a difference between like getting to the point and being blunt, I think. But you know, you can be friendly and casual and you know, maintain formality as appropriate, right? But try not to, I guess, dilly-dally the conversation if that's not your main intention, if that makes sense. So yes, hopefully that is clear. But yes, aside from that, that is largely all I wanted to talk about. So bottom line, as far as quote-unquote play more goes, I think at the end of the day, like I talked about earlier, I think putting in the actual practice is going to get you a lot more results than just sort of sitting around and thinking about like what the next best move is, basically, or like the perfect way to do something. Because yeah, there's this whole notion of like, you know, striving for perfection and how that can be very paralyzing. And there's also this, what is it? Okay, I don't remember. I don't remember what I was gonna say, but basically, okay, I remember. No, I don't. I lost it again. Frick, I want to remember what. Okay, well, anyway, oh, okay, it's like it's there, but it's not there. Okay, I'm gonna add it to the description later. I did not remember what I was gonna say, but that is pretty much all that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully you learned something, and if you have suggestions for future episodes, please leave them in the comment section, because I do read all the comments on these videos. And speaking of videos, if you are interested in more videos like this one, I have many more on my channel, so please explore my channel, check that out if you have not already, and watch my other videos. And stop by my Twitch streams also. Like I mentioned, I do answer questions and you can hang out with me and things like that, so it's a good time. But with that, I will see you guys next time.